First proposition and reply, Francesco Caccellati.
Second, Violet Maggio.
And third, Nicola Pelletti.
Thank you. And opposition, Slovenia team.
First speaker and reply, Lana.
Second, Jaka.
Third, Hano.
Woo, awesome. Congratulations, both teams. As you can tell, I like an audience that is like exciting and cheerful and helps the speakers feel happy about being on stage and comfortable. So you can give them all your love and support during the rounds. Please be quiet while they're speaking. Please don't leave during speeches. Please make sure your phones are on silent. And please don't make any gestures that indicate anything between the teams. This is like not within the rules of the game. The rules haven't changed, however, so it's 8-minute speeches. We'll hear a ding at 1, at 7, twice at 8, and endless clapping at 8:15 because by then you should have wrapped up your speech. The motion for the House today is this House supports nationalizing the gambling industry. Are there any questions before we begin? Then without further ado, I'm happy to call upon the first speaker on our proposition. Woo!
Is everyone ready? Okay. So I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Dear panel, there's something that we can all agree on. The house always wins. But what does this mean in the status quo? It means that the house is a billionaire in a skyscraper buying a yacht in a financial tax haven, while the gamblers that just lost all its funds and its saving life funds has to be supported by the state, who needs to pay for the welfare check, needs to pay for the broken home of the gambler that lost all its savings, and needs to pay for the mental rehab. This is absolutely a corrupted system in which the house, at least, shouldn't be a billionaire exploiting all those people and those life saving, but should be the very own people that are exploited by this mechanism. That's why we, as Team Proposition, stand for the nationalization of the gambling industry, in which we believe that the government and the people that are affected by those addictions are also the people that needs to benefit from the revenue from it. So, what can you expect from my speech? First of all, I'm going to give a couple of framework points into this debate, and then I move on into presenting the first substantive of the 3 substantive that we are going to bring you today in our team line. So, without further ado, let's get into the framework. First things that we need to define is the nationalization. What do we mean for nationalization? In our case, we believe that all the casinos, all the betting companies, and both on person and online, and all the other industries that are in a way related to gambling and to betting needs to be acquired by the state. All of them are going to be, the ownership of all of this is going to be given to a single entity owned by the state, creating a monopoly for the government to have those gambling industries. So, after that we clarify that, it's very important that we take a look into the 3 main stakeholders that we have in today's debate. The private companies that right now regulate those gambling industries, the state, the government that will step in and taking it away from the private companies, and then the gambler that is affected by both of them. So, in the status quo, the gambling industries is dominated by private industries. What does this mean? This means that the private industries see the gambler as a white whale that needs to be milked out of all its saving. Why we say so? Because those companies are private companies with people that invest in them, and they need to get their profits back to the people that invest in those companies. This means that the private company that owns the casino will do everything that it can in its possibility to actually make more profit, regardless of the health of the gambler, regardless of the status after it. So what does this mean? This means that the private companies develop algorithms that keeps the gambler always addicted to the game and makes him lose all his life savings, while the state after that needs to pay for the rehab, the mental rehab. The state needs to pay for the welfare check and needs to pay for the broken home that the gambler lost. No, thank you. So instead, what will happen if the government steps in and take it away from those companies? Well, let's be crystal clear on this. Opposition will try to tell you that also the state has an interest in taking advantage of those gambling and taking a revenue from it. But we, as side proposition, want to be clear on this. The government does not need the gambling industry to make more revenue. It's going to regulate it in order to protect its citizens and to have a safer environment, to actually manage the risk of these addictions. Why we say that? Because, for example, when the government needs to make more money, it won't rely on the gambling, but it will mostly rely, for example, on on enhancing the tax on the citizens. And also because the revenue that the government will get from those casinos, from the betting and the gambling industries, is not a net revenue like the one that the billionaires and the private companies get, but it's a revenue that will also need to cover for the cost of the gamblers and all their addictions in order to preserve the social welfare. So what's the change in all this? In opposition world, the private companies take all the money for themselves and just want to squeeze everything that they can out of the no, thank you, out of the gambler. But instead, in our world, the money that we get from that is going to be used in social welfare. It's going to be used to help our society, and it's a system in which the government does not want to take everything out of its citizens, because it's also a loss for it. For every $10,000 that the gambler lose, if this was all their life savings, the government will need to spend $100,000 for all the reasons that we already said before.
POI.
Yes, I'll take a POI now.
Gambling doesn't stop on your side of the house. The gambling industry still exists, and it is still a luck game, so you lose or you win.
Yes, exactly. That's what we are saying. We are not saying, let's be crystal clear on this, we're not saying that in our world gambling will just disappear. We are saying that the government will not implement the same strategic marketing schemes to squeeze everything out of the gambler. It will not try to squeeze everything out of it, and it's actually not incentivized in using it in order to make more revenue out of it. But it's going to use the monies that he gets from the gambling system to protect the social welfare, and it's also gonna tutelate more its citizens. So, not that we clarify that, what are the burdens that we need to prove in this debate? We, as side proposition, need to prove you that if the government steps in and take the private industry gambling, the gamblers will be more protected, there will be a better social environment, and we're gonna have a better overall society, both for the financial part and the welfare of our society. So, now that we clarified everything, let's get into the first substantive of today's team line. And while the other two are going to be presented by my second speaker, Viola. So, first claim that we make in this debate, we believe that if the government steps in and take and nationalize the gambling industries, we will actually proactively fight the money laundering and requalify all the casino. Now, why we say so? Because in the current system, in the current status quo, as we said in our framework, the private companies that have those casinos wants to make money. What does this mean? This means that the moment that someone with a revenue from a suspicious trade, like maybe we're talking about human trafficker, we're talking about fentanyl dealers and all that type of organized criminals, they're gonna get cash revenue from it, cash that they cannot declare to the state. So what they do, they could go to those casinos where the owners actually just turn their face on the other side. They do not ask where that money comes from, and they don't even want to know, because they only want to get the some revenue from it. So the illegal crime organization goes to the casinos, take all the illicit revenue in cash, they transform it in chips, they make small bets, maybe just lose maybe 1,000 out of 50,000 that they turned into the fish chips, and then retrieve all the $49,000 that they recycled through the mechanism and declaring it as a win by the casino. So Instead, if the government takes on all those revenues when when someone goes in with those cash, they're gonna check where this cash come from. They're not just gonna turn their eyes on the other side, and that's why we have a bigger impact in which we actually fight organized crimes, and we have a better society overall. Thanks you for.
Just a second. Okay, the panel ready? I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. The world the site of proposition is trying to paint me is a world where the government is some kind of an angel who wants no profits and who would keep these casinos a fair game. So what I will do first in my speech, I will go through some negation and then introduce our first argument about security. So firstly, they were trying to tell me how the gambling is going to, on their side of the house, how it's going to be more regulated because the government doesn't have the same incentive to collect profits as companies do. But the government still collects profits. In status quo, they tax casinos to collect profits. The government realizes that casino is a very profitable industry, and an industry that it is not likely to fail because there always will be gambling addicts. There always will be people running into casinos, and because it's addicting, this money is going to circle, and this is a very stable industry that survives even in the corrupt countries, as I will go talk about later on. But the government on their side of the house will still want profit because they know this is a stable economy and the stable industry, and they will want to lean on it so to support its economy, because when it is nationalized, it is part of the government's incentive to keep it stable and to grow it even more. So when they try to tell me that the government is going to try convince people to gamble less, and when they tell me in their impact that that this is much more fair to the people because nobody is going to be luring them in, that does not happen on their side of the house. They still want to grow this industry. They still want people to gamble because the government still wants money, and their characterization of the government is simply not realistic. And then they were telling me how in the status quo, these industries are not regulated and that casinos could do whatever they want. This is absolutely not true. In the status quo, private companies are even more likely to have more regulations than nationalized casinos on their side of the house, because as I will talk about later on in my argument, but private companies are the ones with are seen as more money incentive driven. So people go there, they are more likely to do some, people are more likely to go there to launder money and stuff like that. So these are casinos that are very, very regulated. The government sends people to look what they are doing, to check if everything is running correctly. So the casinos on our side of the house are not some free game where everybody can do it in them as they want, but they still receive a lot of regulation. Okay, now moving on to my argument about security. So I will tackle this argument on two layers. Firstly, of countries with failing economy, and the second with countries with more stable economy. So countries with failing economies are the one with the greatest incentive to nationalize these private-owned casinos, because as I was talking about, these are very profitable industries and industries that are unlikely to fail. So these countries are more often than not leaning on this one industry because it is stable, because people go there, especially with countries with failing economies where people are in generally suffering, cannot afford stuff. They run to stuff like gambling and addiction, as we have seen in the status quo. So and gambling in countries like that is very, very prominent. And when the governments when the governments collect the profits from these casinos in the status quo, it is one of the only things keeping these economies alive and keeping them like semi-stable. And when countries nationalize this type of industry, this is likely to seen as they will see this as an opportunity to grow it even more, to grow this one thing, keeping their economy alive, and they will start pouring in more money and taxing the players even more. Yes.
How can a whole country be based on an industry from the casinos, given that the casino doesn't provide any service to its people? A whole country, its economic, literally cannot be based on that, or else there's not going to be anything happening in the country as a whole.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to tell you here, that these are countries with not stable economies. I'm talking about countries. We're currently in Macedonia. Macedonia has a huge problem with underdeveloped economy, with very bad public healthcare system, with very bad agriculture industry, and the whole economy of Macedonia is leaning on the gambling industry. This is one stable thing they have. And in countries like Macedonia and other corrupt countries with failing economies, this is something that is stable, and people go there and bring in a lot of profits. So this is seen in the status quo. And so when the government is trying to lean on that, the problems already existing, even more amplified. The money goes into that, and instead of these countries putting this money into like healthcare and growing their economy, they are going to be putting them into these casinos, because this is something that is seen as profitable, this is something that is stable, and this is something that is going to bring them a lot of money. But at the same time, they're trying to, no thank you, collect as much money as they can. So they're going to try taxing players even more. They're trying to take more of their winnings, because that is how they are getting money on their side of the house. They're not taxing companies, but from each player's winnings, an amount of money is going to be taken for this industry to remain profitable. And because in these failing economies, the countries are usually corrupt, and people in power are corrupt, and focus on profit and focus on collecting money, this is very likely to happen. So you get an economy leaning on this industry while neglecting others. And then we have countries with stable economies. In these countries, casinos are most corrupt and risky industry because of that, they are very, very regulated on our side of the house. There are a lot of inspectors overlooking and preventing any wrongdoings and money laundering and stuff like that, because and keeping these people in check. And then when this becomes nationalized, this will be in the hands of the country. So it is controlled by the government. It is now seen as more legitimate because it is not a private business anymore. And the government is not some kind of an angel, but it's an actor with their own incentive of money and connections. So the problem shifts. On the rich people and people from rich on the people with connections and more power in the country trying to launder money, and the government connections and control over regulation of these casinos will likely help them launder money and help them gain even more money to keep these connections alive. So on their side of the house, the rich get richer, money gets stolen from the people, and doesn't trickle back into the economy. Thank you.
Okay, if the panel is ready. 1 second, I just timer. Okay, so my speech starts in 3, 2, 1. Dear panel, as the second speaker of the opposition team, you will expect from my speech some things. Firstly, I will rebuttal what the opposition team just said, then I will bring to you our second and third argument, and then the impacts of our team. First of all, let's clarify this. They said that the state is interested by making profit in casino because they are interested to make more profit in people loses. This is not true, because if a state make more profit by casino loses, it's obviously that we have more issues for people, because if they lose, they develop an addiction, and that they will play more and lose more. So we have all the addiction that we all know that is characterize casino and gambling games as bad. If a state has that type of problem, obviously they will have to spend a lot of money in preventing and to in healthcare, because if the people has issues, it's in the interest of the state to resolve their problems, because if people have problems, also the states have problems, because they are obviously connected. So basically, all the profits that they all the income that they make from casino, they will have to spend it in resolve their own problem, the problem that they create. So that point all fall off because of this. Like a state cannot make profit by playing its own people, because it's not in interest, and it's not convenient, because at the end, no, thank you, because at the end it's the own state that will lose all money. So that's why their argumentation is fall out. So going on, I will explain our second and third argument. So we think that by nationalizing the gambling industry, we'll eliminate predatory profit. What does it mean? Basically, in the status quo, casinos are private, and their only goal is to a business model to make the max profit as possible. So they will do everything to achieve this. How? Two layers on this. First of all, often they walk around gambling slow by cheating in their games, because as we know, no thank you, because as we know, the status quo have to prevent illegal gambling. But if they can't control in reality the casino, it's easy for casino and gambling games to walk around the laws. For example, by the fixing in card games, or the algorithm manipulation in a slot machine, and a lot more. So these activities damage players more than they are allowed to do by law, essentially by scamming them. The second layer in this, that they take... yes, 1 second. They take advantages of players' gambling issue. What do we mean? In the casino, you give alcohol, free dinners, hotel room are included by inviting people to remain there and to spend more and more monies. They feel, so people that play in casino, they feel like they matter, and they continue playing even if they at the end they will lose money, because it's maths. If you continue to play, at the end you will lose more than you played. Casino make more and more money by playing players that develop addiction and a lot of issue. Yes.
How is this going to change on your side of the house? You still have people who will likely try to cheat, and you have CEOs running these companies.
Yes. As we already said in our characterization, government has no benefit in cheating their citizens. Why? Its duty of the state to benefit its citizens is basically the reality, the base of a modern society. A state have to protect and to its citizen, because it wouldn't work if not. So, and secondly, the state is not an individual private that has only that profit. It's basically a state, so it will be casino and gambling games, there will be only a part of the entire profit of the nation. So, they are not interested, again, in maximizing all these profits, because they have a lot of other ways to do that. So, by promoting nationalizing by nationalizing the gambling industry, we have an enormous impact. In fact, our citizens are safer, and they are not exploited, just as we explained to you, because it's not in the interest of the state to do that, and because it's not convenient for them, and it guarantees also that laws are actually applied, because it's the state in person that apply it. So, move on our last argumentation. Our last argument, we deeply affirm that it will promote a circular economy. So, in the status quo, casino profits go to the owner, which is who is a private, and that uses them to buy fancy things like jet, yacht, and a lot of more that we all know. So, it's not useful. It's not useful for society, and the only people that earn money spend them for their own.
Last chance.
Yes.
What is even the point of having a nationalized casino if you do not get any profit from it, if the country doesn't profit from it?
No, you didn't understand what I'm saying. We are saying that by promoting and nationalizing a casino, they will not. We are protecting citizens, because they are not going to be scammed, because it's not in the interest of the casino. So we are promoting a regular playing that is going to make profit, of course, but not more than what they are allowed to do. So by continue, I was saying that by nationalizing the gambling, it's not the owner to make profit, but the casino profits will go to the public fund and they will be used to benefit the state and its citizens with obviously public facilities like bridges, streets, healthcare, and a lot more. So it's for an average citizens, when they spend and lose his money at gambling, then he doesn't actually lose it fully because it still get a direct benefit from their money. So gambling losses become kind of like extra taxes that is advantage for the entire society. So with SidePro, we identified that gambling cannot be fully stopped, so we make the most of it. Thank you.
Am I audible? Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. The government's incentive isn't that they want to help people. They want to make profit. They want to expand their economy so they can actually benefit. This is the point of actually nationalizing the gambling industry so they can expand. But side proposition never really pushes that. What they push in their whole first two speeches is that they try to fix addictions, but gambling always exists. They cannot solve it with just some propaganda. In the status quo, in the casinos, in the ATMs, you have, if you need help, you can call this number. You have this, people are incentivized to actually help people. The casinos are incentivized to help them, but they still try to make profit. And secondly here, why just this doesn't work, country doesn't have the incentive, again, to help people to lose money basically on nationalizing, which I will explain later on, but they want profit. They want profit from these winnings, losings. And again, I will prove to you why nationalizing here is bad. No, but now moving on to some negation from side proposition. Firstly, on this circular economy, let me just tell you this. Casinos pay taxes on their winnings, on their losings. They always pay taxes in the status quo, even if it's nationalized. They pay taxes, so some money still goes to the people. Some money still goes to the economy. Some money still helps everyone out. It's not like they present where the money just goes to the rich owner of the casino and they give nothing out. It still goes to the people in salaries in the casino. It still goes to the people. It still goes to them in those in different sorts of economy. But now just moving back to the first argument, no, unlike this, like the state takes care of everything. If you have a corrupt or a not very developed government, the power dynamic between the government and the casino is really, really big. If the country is corrupt, so will the private company. So because the government represents me as a country and their power, they have a lot of power on me, they have a bigger impact on my life than private-owned sectors. So we nationalize everything. If we nationalize every gambling industry, they have a bigger impact on my life. They charge me more taxes on my winnings. And in the end, it always trickles down to people actually being worse. But now moving on to some rebuilding on why politicians are likely to launder money inside more likely to launder money inside of proposition. Yes, of course, in the status quo, we have laundering money even in private sectors, even in public sectors. But as we told you in our first speech, people have private banks, private casinos have mechanisms, have inspectors that check for corruption. Yeah, they can be bribed, but I tell you here, politicians are much more likely, much more easily be bribed than privately owned casinos. Firstly, because the private owners have more money, therefore they will be less likely to budge at a lesser amount of money. So it's more expensive for the person who is trying to bribe to actually get this money clean. And secondly, here politicians are just when they nationalize, they just want, oh yeah, this is quite a lot of money, so therefore they will try to push. They will take the money and let the bribery happen. But even if my profit is going to be regulated, firstly, I will be likely corrupt for my own good, and secondly, we get this bigger net of people who will help me, and I will help them be corrupt inside of if we nationalize everything. And last point here on the rebuild, money of the people and taxes are not under control because as a politician, I don't want anyone to know what I'm actually doing. So the nationalized casinos will have little to no inspections. But now moving on just to my argument, which is about this expense for the country. If a country nationalizes their casino, it is more expensive for them, firstly, to maintain it, and this leads to less spending on other sectors. And if side proposition is pushing this idea of them actually not working for profit, it is even more expensive for the country. But now moving on how do taxes in casinos even work? Because I think this is a mischaracterization in this debate. Firstly, in private-owned casinos, the country sets some amount of tax for the casino. Here, the people's earnings, they take a tax from it. Some money from their earnings goes to the country, goes back into the people, and the other and a little tax also from those earnings go back to the casino, so the casino can be maintained to pay their salaries of the workers, etc. But what happens when something is nationalized? The country sets a tax, and then it's on its own to hold the casino alive, to maintain it. But the problem here is setting their taxes. Firstly, if they set their taxes too low on winnings, they do not get any profit from it. They do not gain anything. It's more expensive for them to maintain, to pay people, than they get no profit. It's more expensive for them to maintain. But if they set too high taxes, people will see, for example, if I go to a casino and win, for example, 10,000 euros, and I then, after taxes, I see, oh, damn, I only get 4,000 euros back. People will see this is really, really not profitable from them. And people will think and be less likely to actually gamble in this high tax casinos. But why is this bad? When countries don't gain enough profit, they start taking the money out from other sectors like infrastructure or like medicine. I'll take a POI.
Which would be better if all those revenues that you are talking about actually goes to the people and not just the small tax in your case?
Yeah, it still does, but I will tell you now, because you through your core case push the idea of casinos helping, casinos trying to people have less addicted, you gain less money, you have less profit in the end of the day. And how does this, like as I said in the end of my first point, how does this impact the people, because the money is taken from other sectors to maintain, firstly, this casino? They have, due to less winnings, people actually, due to less winnings, less people goes actually back to, less money goes back to the people because of the high taxes. Here, more spending in the casino, more spending in casinos sector than in others. For example, we have like worse infrastructure, worse medicine. They have bigger problems. For example, in Macedonia, you have to wait up to 10 hours just to get yourself checked, and in the end, this brings you to a worse quality of life. People start disliking the government. People start not trusting it because they cannot run this casino this casino problem. And the last point here, the economy becomes dependent on a casino. This pushes the idea of a mono-industrial economy, which means they cannot develop. If they try to invest in the other sectors, they can't, because they firstly have to work on their nationalized casino, and they stay at the bottom. They cannot develop if since it's nationalized. It's also easier for them to mess up. It's easier for them to actually stop investing in casino, which brings down the whole economy, since the casinos bring a lot of money, not only just to the government, also to the people. So that's why I have been never more proud to oppose.
As third speaker from side proposition, in my speech you can expect three main things. First of all, we go over some responses to points and clarification on the motion. Then we go to the main clashes of the debate. And finally, at the end of my speech, a bit of weighing and understanding why our impacts outweigh the impacts of side opposition. Now, first of all, panel, to start my responses, let's take a POI that was asked to our second speaker. What's the point of a nationalized casino if it's not profit? Panel, we tell you that we identify that people are not going to stop gambling, which means that the best solution that we have right now is to make it benefit society. And on top of that, even if we assume that the whole characterization from side opposition is true, so the government only cares about profits and the government keeps profits in, and then what does the government do after that? At some point, if the government keeps profiting, they cannot keep on building casinos infinitely as side opposition claims to do. They must do something at that point with the money. And what can they do with that money, panel? First clash point of my speech, which is what is actually the government, what are the incentives that the government has. First of all, we tell you that the government literally has no incentive for them to keep the money. And why is that? Because the government, it's not a private individual, it's not a rich businessman. The government cannot use the money to buy something for themselves. The government cannot like buy a fancy house, buy a yacht, buy a fancy car. They literally cannot do that. That's not part of the government, because the government is an institution, which means that they don't have the direct incentive that a rich businessman and to make more profit, because he thinks that it will better his life. The only thing that the government can do with the money that they get at some point with the casinos is that they are going to spend that money on public facilities, on public projects, on bettering the systems that they have. That's literally, panel, the only thing a government can do. So even if we fully buy and assume that the characterization on side opposition is true, what we get from it is that still a net positive benefit on our side of the house, because the government still has to spend that money at some point. They cannot keep accumulating the money. What are they going to use it for? They're just going to keep it in the government balance and leave it there, not do anything with it, while their people fall and they get poor. That's never going to happen, panel, with literally any government. And on top of that, let's not forget the governments have economists. They're not going to just accept this. They're not going to let this their society just go to ruin in order to build more casinos. That's not a fair thing to assume on side opposition. So that's the only thing that they can do. But then, panel, let me tell you why the characterization that side opposition offers to us also doesn't work. First of all, the government has a duty, which is literally what the government is there for. The state is there for, to benefit its citizens. What does the government do if it's not benefiting its citizens with the money that it gets from the casinos? We don't really know that. The government, again, has no direct incentive in keeping this money. The government must, because of its moral duty, be able to help its citizens. And we tell you that the government at some point is going to recognize that building casinos forever, for some reason, and side opposition keeps claiming, it's not going to directly benefit their citizens, of course. And then on top of that, panel, and then another point on why this characterization is not true is because this characterization is fully based on an economy that doesn't give any service. Because if the government keeps building these casinos forever, their people will literally have nothing to do at all. An economy, in order to work, cannot just keep getting money. That's not how an economy works. The economy must offer services to its people, or else literally people, what are they going to spend money for? What is the government going to spend money for if they don't have this service? There's literally nothing else inside the opposition world. They try to paint to you this view of our world where there's just casinos in a country,
Yeah,
where a
I-
country keeps getting casinos for some reason. We don't really understand how that's even possible in reality, because people would then have nothing to do, as the government is not providing them with anything at all. But then, panel, second clash point on the debate, which is you lose or you win, as taking up UI that was asked in one of our first speeches. Now, what do we mean with this clash point? We tell you that the this is a direct clashment on the economy and the money that is overall earned in both sides. So first of all, we tell you that opposition doesn't really have a true impact on the money that the government earns, and that is because they literally cannot have that in the status quo. When a rich businessman keeps the money, obviously the government is going to make less money out of their side of the house that is in our side of the house. And when we talk to you with our 3 points that the government is then going to be able to invest this money, we immediately understand why our side of the house is in the economic clashment. And that is because we get more money to be able to invest in public facilities and all of that. Because they claim, oh yeah, but we just have taxes. Panel, that doesn't work. Taxes are only a small percentage, or even let's say an incredible amount, like 30% of earnings of a casino. They're still not going to be the whole part, and a rich businessman is going to keep those for himself, and is also going to actively invest them just to make personal profit and keep just a second, and keep going for his own thing. But then on top of that, panel, we also have an economic point on the people, on our stakeholders that are a bit more minor. We tell you that these people, even when they lose money, they don't actually get direct losses, but they we told you. We gave you the a circular economic mechanism, which means that when you lose money, you're still benefiting society, because the money that you lose in our model goes back to the state and is then reinvested, obviously, because the state has that funds. That's again the only thing that they can do with those funds, and then must reinvest them, which means that when you lose money, you're only actually losing a part of it, because another part of that you're losing is then going to directly benefit you. I will take a point now.
If you take all the money you gain from the casino and put it out into other sectors, your casino, your greatest source of money on your side of the house that will do so much great, will fall apart and collapse.
Okay, panel, two main things on this. First of all, a casino is never going to be the main source of the money, and it is incredibly easy to understand, because if we look at a state, they get the most amount of their money on direct taxes on other parts of society, not taxes on the casino. Don't think I'm contradicting myself now, but that is simply because, first of all, taxes are done on the whole population, whereas casinos winnings are only going to be on people that gamble, and so obviously it's not going to be the main source of money with the state, because the state doesn't have insane amounts of casinos all spread around that are making insane amounts of money, and on top of that, people also will need to be incredibly rich and throw insane amounts of money at the casinos in order for this characterization to be all true. But then on top of that, this is literally never going to happen, as I've already explained in the earlier part of my speech, so we don't really get this point. Now, on top of that, panel, we tell you that even these people, even when they lose, and even if you don't buy our characterization on why this money is not going to directly help these people, we still tell you that these people have more real possibilities before the issue gets serious. And why is that? Because the casinos are, the state is going to catch the problem earlier of gambling addiction. When casinos are a centralized net, and so they're all interconnected, this means that we can actively promote a database, something that keeps track of people and identifies if someone is starting to have an issue in a casino that's like in the south of the country, then they are able to identify it, and they are able to actively help that person. In the status quo side, opposition is proposing to you. This does not happen because these people, the casinos don't cooperate with each other, and this means that people then spiral down into gambling issues. We actively give you a prevention on this for our side of the house. Then panel, final clash point, the incentive for the state to win money. As I've already explained, compared to taxes, the state doesn't really earn that much money, whereas with the PI, the state doesn't really earn that much money in comparison to the one that they earn on taxes on the overall population. So we don't really get why this should be the case, that the state then bases its own economy on the money from the casinos, as we said from side opposition. But on top of that panel, side opposition characterizes poor countries as having money mainly from this industry. And as I've already explained to you, an economy cannot be based solely on profit and nothing else. You must also offer services to the citizens, which means that the economy that side proposition is trying to tell you that is going to happen on our side of the house is literally impossible to create and exist, because it would just I mean, it would just not even exist. How are you going to even pay the people that work in to build the casinos? You don't have a construction site in the thing that side opposition tries to tell you that we're doing. So their analysis of the case of the motion doesn't really hold. Panel, to end my speech, quick notes on impact weighing. On our side, we tell you, and we don't really get a full response on money laundering. We have a better impact on money laundering. This is exclusive because the casinos are private and don't have receipts. We just get a small push on this from side opposition, which is that they're going to be inspectors. Panel, in order for this to work, you would literally need inspectors to have a look at every single person playing and keeping track of their wins while they're playing at the casino. We're talking about even thousands of people at a time. Panel, please go in a casino and see if there's thousands of inspectors in it. That's never going to happen. But on top of that, even if it's not fixed fully, we take out the most corrupt way of laundering money. And on top of that, we reduce criminality from the casinos. And on top of that, even if we fully accept their line, all our positive impacts still because of our analysis on how the funds are expended in casinos. Thank you.
So their side of the house, the whole point of their argument is that countries are just going to fix their addiction, and nothing is going, and they're just going to improve anything, everything. But we tell you that addiction of gambling is never going to be fixed because gambling is always going to be there. And even if they try to prove me that the country's incentive is to regulate and there will not be no competitiveness, this is not true. Because countries, what the countries want is to get profit from this sector. Why do they nationalize this? They nationalize this because these are the big companies that get a lot of money into the country. And because they get a lot of money into the country, this is why they get a lot of profit. And their push on gambling addiction is just not there. Because firstly, as I already said, this is not incentive of the country. Because you will not just randomly over the night fix the addiction. Because this takes a long time and this is not just randomly going to change. And okay, they give me the analysis on how the private sectors are more corrupt and that there will be more competitiveness in everything that is happening. But we tell you this is likely not to happen. Because all the profit that they get from this is going to get invested back into the gambling industries. And we tell you that this is more likely to happen because they want the countries to actually be in this, to actually get the profit out of this. And on their side, there's actually no explanation of why this is going to fix anything that they're trying to prove. Because firstly, we tell you that even though there maybe will not be that much competitiveness, there will always be people who will try to do it. There will always be competitiveness in between this because the country wants to get profit. Because even if they try to tell it that much more profit and the money is going to get out of the country, this is not true. Because we get the same amount of money that is going to be put back into the casinos out of taxes that we try to prove you. This is not just the fact that if your privatization of the casino is there is not going to be any investments into the country and everything is going to be lost. Because all they try to paint you is the fact that if I nationalize the casino, all the money will just randomly go into all the other sectors like the healthcare, like the schools. But we tell you that this is probably not likely going to happen, because of the analysis my two teammates gave before. But what we have to prove to you in this debate is actually two things. Why politics is likely to get more corrupted if it's nationalized, and secondly, why it is worse if politicians are corrupted in private sectors. Because we gave you the analysis of why, if the privatization, if there is going to be a privatization of this, the politicians are going to get more corrupted. Because firstly, they're in the position of power. They have the most power, and there is a bigger power dynamic of them over the people who have privatized casinos. And this is because they know they can do anything. Because on our side, we tell you that if it's privatized, when there is money laundering on their side, people are just probably going to get some inspectors trying to look at it, and there will be more regulation on our side of the casinos. And even if they try to push that nationalizing will fix everything, this is not true. Because why did we have corrupt politicians in every country? We have politicians in developing countries, we have politicians in developed countries. And these politicians are more likely to corrupt now even more, because they know that they're never going to get caught. And if my profit is going to be guaranteed because I will money launder, this is even better for me. And money washes people's minds. Money is there because I want profit, and I know that if my money is going to randomly get a lot better and no one is going to cut me, I will probably do it even more. And now on their side, even though they give me the analysis of how the privatization is worse, we give the analysis on why politicians are going to get more corrupted. And now, why is this worse if politicians are corrupted than if if corrupted are the private sectors? Because firstly, this is what directly affects people, because politicians are the ones who have the most power in the country. And secondly, this is stealing their money and making their economy back, like we proved to you in our first argument about the developed and underdeveloped countries about corruption. Because in developed countries, even if we have corruptive politicians, it is for them, as I already said, easy opportunity and money laundering. And also in underdeveloped countries or developed countries like Macedonia or anything like that, we tell you that if this is going to happen, the corrupt politicians have even more incentive to do it. And their economy is already bad. Their economy is already falling apart. And now, if we even nationalize this, well, their profit from the country is only going to casinos and from gambling. This is only going to make more and more corruptive system and more less good things for the people. And what the, okay, I think.
Are you aware of the fact that the profit that these industries make is going to be in the public funding and it's not going to be to politicians? We don't really get what you mean with corruption in politicians. It's not something that's going to be personal, it's something that's state-based.
Okay. Firstly, as I already stated, we gave you the whole analysis of why politicians, if this is nationalized, are going to get more corruptive. Like the whole analysis from my first speech and from the second speech. And they never gave me the analysis of how this is just randomly going to change, and how they're randomly going to change the society if this is going to get nationalized, on why this is going to improve all the sectors, and they're going to improve the addiction, and they're going to improve the economy of the country. Well, we give you the whole analysis of why this is likely to happen, or why the politicians have more incentive and they're more likely to corrupt even everything that is happening, and why the incentive of them giving the money into the casinos is even bigger. And back to why it is even worse if the politics is corrupt than if private sectors are corrupt, because this impacts the normal people, as we already stated. This impacts the economy of the country. This impacts the people's lives. This impacts their payment, their quality of life, like we already said, like in the underdeveloped countries like Macedonia and everything like that. And also, the second thing is, the politicians represent my country. Their power dynamic is really big. And if also the politicians are corrupt, this also means that the other private sectors or the other things are probably going to get to corrupt. Because as we already said, we have a bigger sector of people, a bigger nets that help me connect everything that is happening. And if I have more connections of everything that is happening, if I have more people that are going to help me, more things that are going to improve what is happening, this is just me getting much more power over the people and much more power over the country. And what do we weigh this clash on? We weigh this clash on the magnitude of harm it affects on people. Because firstly, as we tell you, we have more and more regulation, because politicians are, if this is privatized and they are going to see that there is money laundering, they're probably going to get some inspection. But if it is about them, and it is about their money, and about them actually getting the profit out of this, they're probably just going to get less and less regulation of what is happening. And on their side, they never proved to me why this is actually going to improve anything for the people or anything for the country. Well, they proved to you how the magnitude of harm on their side is much, much bigger than on our side. Because on our side, we at least get some regulation over this if we can't fix the gambling addiction, because gambling addiction is equal to both sides. But on our side, we still get at least a little less magnitude of harm on their side, while they try to lessen the economy of the country and the incomes, and they never proved to me how they're going to actually fix anything that is happening in the country. Thank you.
Panel ready? Okay. Like this. Okay. So starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. This debate is happening in two worlds. In where in I guess 4 worlds, in corrupt countries and in non-corrupt countries, and in both nationalized and not nationalized casinos. So the side of proposition only touched upon the world where the government is not corrupt and the government's incentives are to some extent to help the people. But we bring you a whole first half of our first argument that focuses on how the government in corrupt countries, which which economies rely on this very profitable industry, how they have no incentive to put this out of the people, but when these get nationalized, that they pour all money into the casinos and not give anything out. This was not interacted with, and the characterization of people leading these governments, of how we tell you that this looks like countries like Macedonia, where the government, where economies are already failing, so this still stands. But where the most of the debate was happening is in the countries that the government tries to do semi-good things. But how they took that is that they were telling me that the government wants no profit. That is absolutely not true. As we told you through all of our speeches, that the government incentive is a stable economy. The government incentive is when they get an industry, that industry grows, that industry flourishes, and in order to do that, they have to get profits from that industry and invest into that industry. We had a whole argument about how nationalizing this is going to bring going to bring a lot of losses, and how in sense of money, how they're going to need to invest a lot. Okay, now what did the side of proposition bring me here? They brought me an argument about how there's going to be less addiction on their side of the house, but because the government's incentive is to do that because they are losing money on people who are addicted. But what we told you here is that this is not the government incentive. The government incentive is to have some addicted people who will keep coming back to these casinos, keep spending money, so the government can get money, and without people who are addicted and constantly coming into the casino would not function properly. The casinos would fall apart, and this is going to hurt their side so much more, because they try to paint me a world where they take all the profits they get from this casino and invest it into sectors like medicine and stuff like that and grow them. But what we told you here is that this is absolutely not possible, because in no world you can take all profits from the casino and reinvest it otherwise. This needs to go back into the casinos, to the repairs, to the salaries of the people and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, you are left with comparatively the same amount of money as you get from taxes on our side of the house. But what we additionally bring you here is a whole argument about how this is gonna cause losses nationalizing. So at the end of the debate, their side of the house has less money to put into the other sectors, less money than we get from taxes that the government can decide to do with them whatever they want. And then lastly, they talked about money laundering and regulation, when we tell you that the regulation on our side of the house is better, because the institutions that regulate casinos are independent from the government, are less likely to be bought, less likely to be corrupt by the politicians we constantly talked about. Thank you.
Okay, if everyone is ready, I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Dear panel, at the end of today's debate, there's one fundamental question that needs to be in your mind. in which side do you really want our government to be in? Do you want a government like the opposition is trying to push us, a government that doesn't actually cares about its citizens and just want to take the most out of it, or a government as we presented in our prop side, a government that actually cares about its people, a government that actually invests in society welfare and cares and protects its citizens? So, what we can expect from my speech? First of all, I'm going to make a clarifications about the functioning of the centralizations of the industry, which was deeply misinterpreted, especially by the last speaker in the reply speech of the opposition. Then I'm going to present briefly the main pushes that were both from side proposition and opposition, and in the end I'll be weighting the impacts of both of them. So now let's get into the very important clarification that we need to make. How will this happen? How this nationalization will happen? I clearly stated in my first speech in the framework that we are taking all the industries that are currently private and putting all of them in a single government-controlled enterprise. This is not something that politicians really have any role in it, as opposition is trying to push. There is government workers that are involved in this and that handle this enterprise, which is an enterprise from the government. Politicians have absolutely no weight in it, as it's something that is purely on a technical and how the government it works, and it's not something that requires any decisions or lawmakings, which are what politicians make. So, furthermore, all the revenues that get from this, it's not something that the money can just, that the government can just keep in its pocket like the opposition is trying to push. But as we said, all the monies that and the revenues from this industry will go into the public fund of the world government, and then after all the funds, the government distribute all the funds equally in all the other sectors. So of course those revenues will also be used in all the other sectors that we mentioned before. So now let's see the main pushes that we have, especially from side opposition. Let's go through side opposition. We have actually two main pushes. First push that we get is that we're gonna have even more corruption in our world. Why they say so? They mechanize this by saying that politicians are corrupted, even if we say that politicians have absolutely no matter of say in this, and it's bad because it's gonna be somewhere bad for our society. Well, we as side proposition said many times that first of all, the system is already corrupted as it is in today's world. In the status quo that they are trying to defend, there is already this corruption. And so even if you don't buy our argument, for which we say that politicians do not, first of all, politicians are not involved and they're not the ones that needs to be bribed, but the workers of the government are the one that needs to be bribed. And government has far more regulations than private sectors, so it's way more difficult to bribe. But even if you don't buy these and you still think that there gonna be these bad corruptions, it's something that stands neither on our side or on their side, as it is already like that in the status quo. This isn't really something that affects proposition and our world, but it's certainly something that is already there and doesn't fall anywhere. Even if you don't buy our argument, for which we say that we are actually reducing it, as my speakers already said many times. Now, the other main push that we get is that the government will keep all its money for itself and not redistribute it to its citizens. Well, panel, we stated many times that government needs to ensure the welfare of the citizens. All the revenue will go in a public fund that is going to be redistributed in all different sectors. And we also said that government is not incentivized to gain more revenue from the gambling industry, because more revenue means also more expensive, because the moment they have more revenue, citizens of the country lose more of their money, so the economy, the general economy of the countries lose more power. That's why we have very minor impacts that are actually exclusive on opposition side, while we have bigger impacts that we explain many times in the proposition side. That's why we won. Thank you.